Welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel, and welcome to 30 Days of Preparedness, hosted by Big Valley Living, good friends of ours. We're looking at National Preparedness Month here, right? So we're doing the 30 Days of Preparedness. There is a sponsor of this collaboration. The sponsor is Avid Armor, and they're giving a 10% off discount to us, 10% off to share with you guys, to share with the viewers, the watchers of the videos. So there's also going to be a giveaway as part of this collaboration. So there's a live giveaway held on 4:30 p.m. Monday, and I believe that is Pacific time, 4:30 p.m. Monday, September 30th, 2024. And as always, of course, watch all the channels, right? There's a lot of videos, a lot of great content creators, some big names in this collaboration, this preparedness collaboration, and we'd like you to watch all the videos. As part of the giveaway is you've got to leave comments, right? So watch all the channels, leave thoughtful original comments on each to be considered for the giveaway on the live finale, Big Valley Living YouTube channel. Monday, September 30th, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, and only residents of the United States will be eligible for prizes, right? So we're doing 4 videos as part of this collaboration. We've got every Saturday starting with the 7th today, and then going for the rest of the month. So this first video we're doing as part of the collaboration is we're calling Intro to Prepping, and we're going to talk about the rule of threes. And I brought a lot of stuff. I'm surrounded by gear. You probably can't see it on the camera. I'm surrounded by gear that I want to show you, and I want to talk a little bit about prepping, do that intro. What is prepping? If you watch our channel, Two Doctors Homestead, I do a lot of prepping videos. We do consider ourselves a homestead. You might be able to see some of our homestead stuff in the background. The pigs are actually right there. I don't know if they're going to let me finish this video before they came over. I gave them a little bit of treats. I gave them some food, so over there eating some foods. We do homesteading. It's something we've been doing for a lot of years. I'm a second-generation prepper, so I've been prepping my entire life. My dad was a prepper and survivalist, so let's talk about what does that mean when I say I'm a prepper, right? There might be some people that are, new to the idea of prepping, interested in being more prepared. National Preparedness Month. It is, in essence, what the word sounds like, prepper, being prepared. So being prepared means if a disaster happens, if something happens, you're prepared, just like the Boy Scout motto, which was always be prepared. I believe I was a Boy Scout. It was a long time ago. Now, preppers in general tend to have, and maybe it's less now than it used to be, a bit of a bad reputation, and you could ask sort of why. And the question is, once you go down that prepping road, go down that rabbit hole, where do you stop, right? What are you preparing for? And in the process of becoming prepared and trying to answer that question, what are you preparing for? It could say, hey, I live in a place with tornadoes, so I want to be prepared for a tornado. So you look at that and you say, hey, maybe I need a tornado shelter. If you have a tornado shelter, it should be stocked with the things you would need to survive that incident, which could be food and water, right? Different emergency supplies, right? You're prepared then for that tornado. You've got your tornado shelter. What if you're prepared for wildfires? I've seen that before. People say I'm prepared for wildfires. I used to live in California. I don't anymore, but there were a lot of wildfires, and people in that situation, you have to be ready for a quick bug out, right? If you live in an area that has a lot of wildfires, got some gunshots in the background. This is rural Texas. It happens. You've got to be ready to bug out, right? I mean, obviously, there's things you can do to prepare your property. You want to move burnable things away from your house, right? You create kind of a safety zone around your house. But ultimately, if a large wildfire is coming at your house, is bug out. You bug out. So you want to be ready for a quick bug out, have the bug out vehicle, something you can trust to get you away from the wildfire. And then think about what you would have in the car, right? And that's if you're in that area, you may already be prepared for wildfires. So does that make you a prepper? Well, you're someone that is prepared, right? So you can keep going with that. And we say, okay, tornadoes, yes. Wildfires, yes. Hurricanes, yes. What about self-defense? You prepared to defend yourself? Well, maybe not make you a prepper being prepared to defend yourself, but that is something that might be included in your prep prepping with being prepared to defend yourself. What about prepared against some of the big things like the pandemics? Like we just went through the pandemic, so preppers kind of look at that and say, hey, am I prepared for the next pandemic? Was I prepared for the last pandemic? What about World War III? Are you prepared for that? Nuclear war? Are you prepared for that? And the further you go down the rabbit hole, you could lose touch with regular everyday to day folks, and that's where preppers start to get sort of a bad reputation as doomsday crazies, because when you start looking at everything going on in the world, even some of the statistical probabilities, right, you've gone down a rabbit hole, you're seeing the world through different eyes, and perhaps trying to be prepared in case something like that happens to take care of your family, right? So that's prepping in a bit of a nutshell. Now we want to talk about the rule of threes. So when you're looking at becoming prepared, getting into being a prepper, you want to prioritize, right? You don't want to just go out and buy a bunch of guns and then you get a bunch of rice and beans, right? You've got to prioritize your preps, and you look at the rule of threes gives you a structure to sort of prioritize that. So we say 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks. So what happens in the first 3 minutes? What happens first 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks? What are you going to need to survive? And those numbers are not perfect, right? I might say 3 weeks without food, and I've seen, no one can survive 3 weeks without food, but you watch shows like Alone and Naked and Afraid, and they seem to go a lot longer than that, right? These are general guidelines, right? So we'll jump into that. So the first rule of threes is 3 minutes, and I said I've got props here, so we'll get into some props. First 3 minutes of any disaster, any emergency situation is first aid, right? Do you have first aid kit? Are you trained in first aid? First aid thing I have here, and I'm just going to pull it out, is a tourniquet, right? If you're in a situation where people have an injury, right, that is bleeding, you want to stop the bleeding very quickly. You want to perform emergency first aid, so certainly a tourniquet, a first aid kit. Got my scissors, and I'm not going to dump the whole first aid kit, but have an emergency first aid kit. So first prep, number one prep I'm giving you today is a first aid kit, and I'll put that back in there later. You should have one. You should be able to administer emergency first aid. I'm not saying you gotta carry this with you at all times. Certainly you keep it in your car. There's dozens, hundreds, thousands of different first aid kits out there that you can look at, but having things, basic stuff like a tourniquet, and we went through the Rhino Rescue emergency trauma kit, right? There's different kinds of first aid kits, but something like a tourniquet, compressed gauze, ways to stop bleeding, maybe take some training. That's the first rule of threes, 3 minutes. First 3 minutes of an emergency situation, of a disaster, even if it's just a car crash. We don't have to be talking about thermonuclear war, even a car crash, right? First aid. Is everyone okay? Is anyone bleeding? Stop the bleeding. Rule of threes, first 3 minutes. So if you say, I've got $100 and I want to get into prepping, well, number one thing to look at maybe is your first aid kit. Do you have a quality first aid kit? So the second side of the rule of threes, the first 3 minutes, right? You can't survive very long without air. So we say 3 minutes first aid, 3 minutes without air. And as silly as it has seemed throughout my life to say, oh, you need a gas mask, well, when you look at all the chemical spills and stuff like that, maybe you do. Maybe you do need a gas mask. This is basic cheapo gas mask. It's got the canister filter. Now a note on the canister filters is these are only good for about 4 hours. So maybe you see in the movie they got the gas mask and they're good forever, right? But 4 hours is probably more than enough time to get somewhere safe. So do you need a gas mask? That's up to you. But you see, over the last couple of years, there seem to be a lot of chemical spills, train derailments, toxic gas, that kind of stuff. You might want to consider, right? You do not have to go out and get the $300-400 gas masks that are out there. Not saying not to, not saying you can't, but maybe you don't have to, but something like a gas mask. So that's the first rule, 3 minutes. 3 minutes medical supplies, 3 minutes without air. And even like a wildfire, once again, taking it back to the California days, wildfires happen, right? So you might need the gas mask for a wildfire. So first rule, 3 minutes. Next rule we're going to give you is 3 hours. So we say 3 hours without shelter, right? And that depends obviously on the conditions. I could sit here in my pool, right? You can't see it, but it's right there. For more than 3 hours, I don't need emergency shelter, right? Clearly, we're talking about in extreme situations, whether it's a snowstorm, whether it's, extreme heat, 120 degrees in the Arizona desert, right? There are situations where 3 hours without shelter and you're not going to make it, right? You've got things like hypothermia. If you're out in the outdoors and it gets wet and you get cold, you're not going to be doing so good, right? So we talk about shelter, we talk about emergency shelter. We're not necessarily talking about your house. We're talking about what do you do if you have to leave your house, right? Bug out is a thing, and we've talked about bug out before, situations where you might need to bug out. Tell a story on this. So I've got a friend that was in Wisconsin. This was maybe eight years ago. There was a lot of civil unrest in Wisconsin, protesters outside of his house, and he said it was generally well known that if you called the cops, they probably weren't going to show up. He felt unsafe, so potentially could have bugged out, right? At that point, if you're in that situation, maybe bug out is the best answer. Now that you've bugged out, you no longer have your house for shelter. So what are your shelter options? You could say, well, I'll be in my car. What if you run out of gas? What if your Tesla battery dies? Now, that's not the best shelter, right? People freeze to death in their cars. It happens in the wintertime. It's horrible. So we're going to talk about emergency shelters. And shelter can mean a lot of things to a lot of people in a lot of situations. A good jacket could be shelter. This is a shelter options pack mule. It's a poncho liner, basically military style blanket. Takes up some space, right? Takes up some space. Nice blanket. Not saying this is going to keep you warm in the Arctic, but a blanket, any kind of blanket, falls into that shelter category. Other items for shelter here. So I have Life Bivy. This is basically just an emergency blanket, Life Bivy. It fits in a little baggie. It's a heavy-duty reinforced life blanket. And then I've got a life tent, right? So these are very small. These take up a lot less space than, say, an actual. You could certainly have a regular tent, regular sleeping bag, not putting those down. But if you're space conscious, you've got a little fold-out life tent, you've got a little fold-out life bivy, a little sleeping bag, right? So these could be kind of cool in terms of emergency shelter. If you got hypothermia, if you're in an extreme situation, something like this could make a huge difference. So those are two things that would fall into shelter. Something simple, emergency poncho. Once again, hypothermia, #1 killer of outdoor enthusiasts. Emergency poncho keep you dry. Getting wet in the cold will make you, will put you in a situation where hypothermia could come on much faster. So even just a basic poncho, $1 or less, could make a big difference, could keep you alive. Rule of threes, 3 hours without shelter, emergency poncho. Some other shelter options here. This is just a 2 mil plastic drop cloth, right? Also could be shelter. You can make a tent. You can make a poncho. There's a lot you can do with a drop cloth. And I threw in some paracord here, right? If you're going to try to make your own MacGyver, your own tent with just a plastic drop cloth, maybe a little paracord, something like that. But this absolutely could be shelter. A large trash bag could be shelter, right? Shelter can mean a lot of things. In addition to shelter, got a couple things. Fire, right? We're going to get into two as one. I've got two ways to make fire. You got an old magnesium fire starter, and this, if you're not familiar with it, this is matches, just an emergency all-weather strike anywhere matches. I consider fire part of shelter, right? You've got your tent, you're going to need to get warm. You build a fire. Fire would be part of food. Fire is part of water. Fire is a little part of all of it. Matches. Thought I had some matches here. Yeah, no, I've got matches right here, right? A lighter, fire starter, anything like that. Some way to make fire. Two ways to make fire is a good idea. We'll call that as part of shelter. And then also, depending on where you're at, mosquito netting, right? Just some basic mosquito netting. Probably not a bad idea, especially if you're spending the night somewhere. You know, we've got the West Nile coming out now. You got the Eastern equine encephalitis coming out now. Mosquito netting, not a bad idea. So that's 3 minutes medical attention, 3 hours shelter. So now we're going to 3 days. 3 days without water, right? Now maybe someone's gone 4 and maybe someone's got 20, but the general rule is you're not going to live much longer than 3 days without water, and you're probably not going to be feeling great by the second day, if that, without water. So in order to survive, you need water, and I'm going to show you some options here. You've got, I'll kind of take water in a couple ways. You've got stored water, whether you do a water bottle. They've got these little water pouches, emergency drinking water pouches. This, I will say, is the most expensive way I've ever seen to buy water, but I went ahead and got a pack of them anyway. But this is emergency water, right? You need water to survive. You won't live very long without it. So stored water, whether it's just regular cheapo water bottles you get at the store, whether it's a gallon jug of water, 5-gallon jug of water, 50-gallon jug of water, little packet of water, stored water, you need water. You take water with you. This is something like this is pretty cool. It's just a water bottle. This is triple tree. So one nice thing about this bridges between stored water and what I'm going to talk about next, which is accumulated water, right? This is a single wall stainless, so it holds water. You drink water out of it, but you could boil water in it. So any water you accumulate, whether it's out of the pool, whether it's out of a puddle, creek, river, stream, off the roof, whatever it is, you find it on a puddle along the way, you're going to want to sanitize, sterilize that water, so you're going to boil it, right? There's actually some other options I'll show you, but something like this, if you choose to boil water, you can boil water right here in the water container. So this is useful to have. Got the pouch for it, carry, easy to carry with you, carries the water, doubles as a boil vessel. On the topic of boiling water, if you don't want to do that water bottle, something like a little pot, this is a little camping pot, any kind of water kettle, you could take it with you, keep it in your preps, you find water, you boil water, you could make your food in here as well. Some basic way to boil water, right? You want to sanitize your water, you don't want Giardia or any of those other nasty things that come along with drinking untreated water. You won't survive very long with that kind of stuff. So boil your water or filter, right? There's water filters out there. You got a Sawyer Mini. We've got just a basic Life Straw. Not that expensive, certainly more expensive than they used to be. I remember when these were like 10 bucks. I think they're closer to 20. I tend to lean towards the Sawyer Mini, right? Or the Sawyer in general over the Life Straw. You take your own opinion on it. This says it filters 1,000 gallons. I'm pretty sure this one says 100,000 gallons, right? So it seems to claim to have a lot more longevity. I've made some videos on those, but you find water. If you don't want to boil it, you don't have time to boil it, you don't want to make a fire, that takes a lot of work, you got to accumulate wood, you can filter water, right? And that's the Life Straw, that's the Sawyer. And there's plenty of other brands now that do that, right? So you don't want to have your water. Ways to filter your water, 2 ways, rule of 2s. 2 is 1, 1 is none, meaning you might have your Life Straw and think you're good, and then you trip and fall and you break it in half, and now you don't have a Life Straw. Now you have no clean water, right? So 2 ways. 2 ways. You can do the Life Straw, and you could do the boil, you could do the Life Straw, you could do the Sawyer Mini. Always have 2 ways to do anything. And then 2 more things. We're not even done with water yet. Chemical treatment, right? These are the aqua tablets, potable aqua water purification tablets. So this would be an alternative to filtering, alternative to boiling, is you chemically treat. You could certainly use multiple layers if you want, if the water is super sketchy, but something like chemical treatment, water chemical treatment, the water we drink at home, right, in our house is chemically treated. So there are water chemical treatment options. And then you got a schlock key. I think, did I say that wrong? I might have said that wrong. Silcock, there we go. Sorry, Silcock key, right? If you know what this is, this can open different faucets if you're in an urban environment that might get you water, right? So Silcock key, another option. You could have it with you. It might help you find water, right? Open different valves. Get you the water, urban water, type environment. So that's the 3rd rule of 3s. That was 3 days. You're gonna need water. Probably after the first day you're going to be real thirsty, second day, but certainly by the 3rd day you're going to need water. So we've now survived 3 days at this point, right? We have our medical, we have our gas mask, we have our shelter, we have our water. We've made it 3 days of preparation here now. So we're pushing it out now. We're going 3 weeks. So 3 weeks without food. So once again, this is fluid. I'm not going to argue 3 weeks. I saw one guy said, oh, people can't survive without a meal. They lose their minds. And that's true too. Physically, right, 3 weeks without food is a general rule. So I've got, like anything, I said I got a couple options for you, right? 2 is 1. So you all know food, you eat food every day. Bag of Skittles is food. It may not be healthy, right? But something like SOS rations. These are little survival bars. Certainly more expensive than they used to be, $5, $10, $20 each. Survival ration could go a long way to help you out. The next one we have here is certainly MRE, XMRE, right? This is a meal ready to go. This is 1,300 calories, so it's not a day's worth of food, but you stack up some MREs, gives you emergency food. And then the last thing I have here is you might say, okay, that's the food you brought with you. What if you want long term? This is my emergency survival hunting kit. I'm not going to completely take it apart. I've done videos on it before. It has emergency fishing kits. It has a slingshot. It's got a trap line. It has all sorts of different emergency hunting options. I've got a guide to edible foods in here. We've got some food preparation stuff in here. I said trap wire, I probably said that. We've got a game call in there. So there are options. You can acquire food depending on where you're at, depending on the environment. And obviously, you know, you want to keep aware of the laws, things like automatic fishing reels, those kind of things. Fishing in general, you might need a license, but in a survival situation, you're probably going to be less worried about that. So that's it, right? That's the rule of threes. 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, and it looks like my battery on this thing's dying. Just killed a battery and they're shooting in the background. So once again, 30 days of preparedness. This was Intro to Prepping Rule of Threes. I want to thank Big Valley Living for inviting us to the collaboration. Check out the other channels, check out the hashtag, check out the collab. Big shout out to the sponsor, Avid Armor. There's the giveaway. Don't miss the giveaway. Big Valley Living's YouTube channel, Monday, September 30th, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Check out their channel. I'm sure there'll be a lot more information around this, and we're going to jam some information, some links and whatnot in the description. Watch all the videos. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you.